A new force now comes into being, the force of money allied to technology, which robs people of the power to control their work. Let me put this to you in very personal terms. You see, I was reared in an orphanage in England, hundreds of children without parents. When I was 14, I was sent to work in the bakehouse to learn to make bread. And I look back now and realize I was at the very fag end of a historical process which the Luddites had been fighting about. You see, my old baker, he was near retirement age, but he was a master baker. And he wasn't master baker for nothing. He was a master of his craft. He decided every day how much flour, how much water, yeast, salt to mix in the dough, how long to let it rise, when to light the oven, what to light it with, how much fuel, when to cut the dough back and turn it into loaves, what shape would the loaves be, what size, how long to let the loaves rise, when to put them in the oven, and when to take them out. It was a decision-making, creative role. And at due course, the oven door would be opened, and I was privileged to light the gas jet and put it in the oven, huge thing, half the size of this room, with stacolites of soot hanging from the ceiling, a sea of golden loaves shimmering in the oven heat, and a smell like paradise, wafting out to tell the community that for another day its bread had been baked to perfection. And I would hand him the peel. This was a man who would say to me, read me that bit in the paper about Hitler, what's he doing in Germany? And this bloke Franco, what's he up to in Spain? He couldn't read, I could. But he was a master baker. And when I gave him the peel, he would push it under the first loaf near him and bring it towards him, and he would tap the crust. And by God, it had a crust, you know. It wasn't like this supermarket guy that's clogging your guts and giving you cancer as hard as you can work on it. Put your finger through it, it comes out the other side. It was genuine bread. And there was I at 14 looking up into this old man's face and seeing a look of total satisfaction and accomplishment and fulfillment. His was a decision-making, creative role in one of the ordinary, mundane things of life. And when you look round the modern world, ask yourself, when you think about the problems of young people, what is society offering in terms of decision-making, creative use of their capacities to make decisions, to create, and so on? Ask yourself, when you think of how, well, my bakehouse, my baker retired and they shut the bakehouse down and bread began to be made not by master bakers but by chemists and accountants. And the same is true of all the other things. The clothes we wear today are not made by master tailors, they're made by computers who cut up the cloth according to computerized calculations and so on and so on. And on the farms, you know, I remember in 1945, just after the war, motoring through Austria, and in those days, after the harvest of wheat, the hay was stacked into hay stacks, and each village that I went through had its own haystack, and every haystack was completely different in shape and design. And people who were labouring in the fields with their hands were not content just to pile hay on top of each other and say finish. They designed something that gave pleasure to the eye, something that gave them a sense of pleasure and fulfillment. That world had gone. It was a world which began to go in 1812 when the Luddites were defeated, and it's been taken over now by a compendium of forces of which money and technology are supreme.